Hello everyone, I'm Mattia. I'm part of the faculty. I joined LIS in the early days when the faculty was created in 2019. I'm a philosopher by training, and at LIS I teach a variety of subjects mainly related to writing and critical thinking skills. And these days I'm the head of research and development. And here with me today is Matt.
Hello everyone, I'm Matt. I am Chief Product Officer at LIS. I have been with LIS since September, but on the fringes for a little while before that. And my role is essentially to think about beyond the core undergraduate experience, what are all of the other kinds of learning experiences that we might offer? And beyond that, also how do we improve and enhance the learning experience, and particularly thinking about how technology comes to bear upon what we do as well, because a lot of my background has been in technology. And Mattia and I have been thinking quite a lot about our research and development strategy, and that has meant that we both had to think about or understand each other's perspectives on what we mean by research. And so we thought it'd be an interesting topic for us to talk about today. So my first question to you, Mattia, is what is academic research?
So that's a big question. So I think I'm gonna do what we do at LIS when we tackle complex problems with our students. I'm going to map out a little bit the problem area. So what is academic research? Academic research is the kind of research that is done in academia at university. Now this is a very simple answer, but the idea is that research can be done in different places and in different ways. And so when we say academic research, that is really very much the product of the university as we know it, the modern research university. So most traditional universities in the world, but not LIS, are still organized into departments. And we typically think of a department as representing a discipline. So when you become professionalized, when you become an academic researcher, you start researching your subject, your discipline in a certain department. And so you become part of what we call your academic tribe, your community. You learn to speak the language of your community. You develop instincts that are aligned with the DNA, the history, the culture of your discipline. And so that is how you become an academic researcher. And then in the end, if we look at the end point and universal currency of academic work, that is publication, all these things, the language you speak, your habits, your rituals, they come up in the way in which you write up your papers, your books, your funding applications. And that's the life of an academic researcher.
That makes a lot of sense. And so what are the things that are good, in your view, about academic research, and where are the areas that could be improved, or like particularly in terms of how we think about research at LIS, where do you think research could be done better and become more useful?
Sure, that's a very interesting question. Well, I think there are pros and cons, of course, about academic research. Academic research produces specialist knowledge. And I think we badly need a specialist knowledge in this world. Think about the pandemic and COVID. We really need strong, robust expertise. So I don't want to romanticize academic research, but from a societal collective point of view, if we just look at the sheer amount of specialist knowledge that has been produced in academic research, that has contributed to human progress immensely. Now, having said that, I think there is growing frustration inside and outside of academia, frustration that specialist knowledge has become too specialized, really. And so if we, going back to what I said before, if we look at how academic communities work, in general, they produce work often of great quality, great sophistication, but that work is targeted at, not to say consumed by, the very same community in which it is produced. Mm-hmm. And so we look at the landscape of academic research and we see very many islands that sometimes don't speak to each other. And that's a problem. If you're an outsider, you come from outside a certain community, you basically don't understand what is being done. And it's great work. It's work that requires a lot of time and effort. But unfortunately, sometimes that work seems irrelevant to the problems, the complex problems that we tackle in society. So pros and cons, really. And just following up on this, I wonder, before I said academic research is the kind of research done by academics, how about non-academic research? We've been talking quite a bit about it. What's your take on it?
So I guess my answer would be in that, I guess, in my world, I'll answer this question from a product person. So research is a big part of how we think about product development and what I would call a kind of product mindset. And it's because the starting point is really based on what are the needs that you're trying to solve and address, and what is the problem that you're trying to solve in the world. And I think often people think about building new products, which is, I've got a great idea, I'm going to build this thing and I need to go and find customers for my product, when actually the best way is actually to think about, well, what are the problems that exist in the world, and how do you find the right product to meet the needs of those customers. And it's related to design thinking, where you often start by empathizing with a problem that somebody has, thinking about ideas and solutions that you then might address that problem with, and then testing it as quickly as you can, and then putting that in front of people in order to understand that more, and then going around this kind of loop of testing and understanding. And a lot of that is obviously based on research. And I guess there's broadly kind of two forms as a product person that you kind of think of research. There's the more foundational research, which is about uncovering the kind of problems and opportunities that you could potentially address and solve that exist. And then there's what you might term directional research, which is where you've come up with some sort of solution to that problem. And it's about then testing it with people that then might use that product in order to solve that problem, and seeing how they respond to that. And all of that then basically then you feed back into how you kind of solve that problem better.
Okay, so I think you're suggesting that if we inject some product thinking into research, the way we do research, we could actually fix some of the problems with academic research, right?
I mean, I guess if the ultimate goal of research is to have some kind of relevant impact for society and so on, then I think it being able to focus on the problems that actual individuals have or that exist in the world, and centering the research around that rather than grounding it in the discipline could be potentially useful. And I think the other kind of key component is I suspect that people are, like, in the same way that as a product person, the danger is that you have a great idea, you want to build that idea and find people that are interested in that idea. I suspect that is often the case with academic research, whereas actually being able to fairly early test that idea with people like, is this a problem that needs solving? How do you kind of think about the problem, and informing the research by the intended impact that you want to have at the end could potentially be a more useful way of doing that, rather than going down the rabbit hole for too long without realizing how it's going to impact the world.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, so surprisingly enough, this is what the early champions of interdisciplinarity had in mind for research. And so when interdisciplinarity became a thing in education about half a century ago, really, and so people were pushing for some innovation in the academic world, they thought about relevance, impact, and audience as the key criteria that could drive really a reform of university structures and the way in which we do teaching, learning, and research as well. And so this is also very timely, because in the research and development strategy that we worked on and approved a few months ago at LIS, we really identified this key criteria, these key elements, relevance and audience, as the criteria that will inform our research efforts and endeavors at LIS in the future. Of course, taking the development, the product thinking dimension into account.
I mean, I think that what's really interesting about that is it also highlights the need to have an interdisciplinary approach, because I think if you're passionate about a particular discipline and you know, like, just about that kind of narrow field, it's that problem where in order to solve that problem, like if all you know is a nail and or all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, that kind of idea. So if you can bring, I guess, like different perspectives to bear on solving those problems, then you can come up with like kind of multiple solutions to that. So I think that also like is interesting in terms of like how interdisciplinary research it might be different from like research within a discipline, and more maybe related to the world that I understand as a product person.
Completely. And so we're looking forward to building doing more on research and development at LIS. This is a pretty new thing. We are a teaching institution, but we all know that the more research and development you do, the better your teaching can become.
And we're very much thinking about the research that we do being able to kind of then like feed back into the products that we develop and what we teach. So like creating that kind of what we, again in my world, would call a kind of flywheel of like understanding the problem, like being able to then like create case studies in terms of how we solve that problem, and then feed that back into kind of how we help people learn and work out different ways to solve complex real world problems.
That's great. So thanks a lot, Matt. And if you're interested, just get in touch with Matt or myself.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We're very much interested to hear other people's perspectives on academic and R&D type research in order to inform our own perspectives. Thanks, Mattia.
Thank you.